you have these conversations with, you know, with men like you who are equitable and who believe in this type of thing, what these types of conversations and these type of conferences actually do is they open your eyes to things that exist that you might not have seen before, that are implicit biases that are so, they call them microaggressions, which I think that a lot of times people think that the challenges that are happening are overt. They're obvious. So I'll give you an example. So we published a paper on introductions of speakers at the American Society for Clinical Oncology. And women were more likely to be introduced by first name and men were more likely to be introduced by title. And that is a big deal. And the people who were doing the introductions weren't thinking that they were being, you know, sexist or that they were doing anything wrong. They just, maybe they knew the woman and they didn't know the man, or maybe, you know, there was all sorts of different reasons why people have given when these types of studies come out. But those types of naming practices, so calling a woman by her first name and calling a man doctor, that puts them in different categories.
Yeah,
Sure
that's
does.
a great point.
Sure does.
It's subtle. It's like body language too. Little cues that you know, they're not, maybe they're probably not even conscious. It's just, yeah, got a lot of work to do.
Well, it demonstrates how subtly it creeps into the culture.
For sure. I mean, look, you know, in advertising, there's subliminal cues and little messages that are there, that are planted there too, intentionally. I was a psych major. I'm fascinated with like how people behave in this. But you know, so one of the questions I had for you too, Dr. Jain. We're all colleagues here.
There you go.
I stand corrected. No. What? You know, one of the things, so I don't know if it's so much a question, but it's an observation. So, and maybe this is a challenge that comes with what you're trying to accomplish too, is, you know, you're covering a really important area, but how do you get this message conveyed to your target audience, you know, let's say women in particular, without them, without bestowing, let's say, a victim mentality too, because you don't want to promote that either. You know, the three of us, these three old guys here, we're kind of like, no, we already respected you. We already believe in you. We are here by your side. And why maybe we don't say anything? Because we already accepted you, and we appreciate your strength and your intellect, all these things that are important. You know, all the other stuff is background noise. So, but how do you do this so that people we never want to feel sorry for ourselves. Life is not fair, and we have to just keep plugging, and you know that, but how do you, is this something you've even considered?
So that's why we call this Women in Medicine Summit an evolution of empowerment, because this isn't about feeling bad for ourselves. And I've made the point from the very beginning, this is not a group of women getting together to complain. That's not what I believe in. That's not what I think is important. I think we complain to our friends. I complain all the time to people, but that's not what this summit is about. This summit is about getting skills and professional and personal and leadership development and advancement and finding ways to change the system. And it's coming up with strategies to fix a system that is really inequitable. I mean, it is at every single level. And part of it is because medicine in itself is a hierarchical system. And so there are barriers that have been put in place that need to be changed, period. Like, there's not a question about that. I think the really important thing, especially, you know, the three of you Caucasian men who are, you know, allies, I think you hit the nail on the head where you said, you know, we don't really say anything, we don't talk about it because we just think of you as equal. I think a big reason for bringing men to the conversation is because in order for things to change, we need men like you to not just say, well, we're equal, we're not going to talk about it. It's got to be, you identify it and you call it out, because you have that position of privilege where you can call something out. So I'll give a perfect example. When you're sitting in a meeting and, you know, there's 3 men and 3 women, and the woman Jennifer gives an idea, and Jennifer says her idea, and then 5 minutes later, Tom says the same idea, but rephrases it. And everyone's like, oh, Tom, that's a great idea. I mean, that happens all the time. So what you can do, instead of sitting there and saying, well, Jennifer thought of the idea, but Tom brought it, let's just keep moving with it. You can say, hey, Jennifer, that was a great idea you brought up a few minutes ago. Tom, thank you for explaining it in a little bit of a different way. Jennifer, do you have anything else to add to the idea that you propose? And that is the easiest way many of us call it being an upstander, not a bystander, where you can actually not just be somebody who knows that women are equal and should be treated equal. You can make sure that you are standing up when these types of things happen in front of you.
Thank you so much for joining us for the discussion today. If you would like to learn more about our guest, head on over to our Patreon page, where you can access exclusive content, including the full segment of our show. Never want to miss an Inside the Doctor's Lounge clip? Be sure to click the subscribe button to our MD Coaches YouTube channel. As always, we appreciate suggestions for future show topics. Let us know what you're thinking in the comments below. And finally, special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music for the show.